And you can call your next witness.
The next witness will be Detective Duncan.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell your last name?
Good morning. My name is Nathan, or afternoon. My name is Nathan Duncan. Last name is spelled D-U-N-C-A-N.
Where are you currently employed?
So I'm currently employed with the Chandler Police Department in Arizona.
How long have you been employed with them?
I was hired by Chandler Police Department in June of 2000, and I've been employed with them ever since. So going on 23 years.
What is your current title and or position?
So I'm currently assigned for the last going on 9 years or 8 years with the robbery homicide unit.
And is your title detective?
Yes, it is.
Do you have any specialized training in order to be a law enforcement officer?
So in Arizona, to start our law enforcement career, we attend an academy. In my case, I attended the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy in Phoenix. It was approximately 4 months. And then afterwards, you attend a post-academy with the department where you're trained by a training officer. Every year, we undergo advanced officer training where we learn about case law. We do defensive tactics. We do firearms training. More specifically, as a detective for the last 19 years, I do take and attend different conferences and attend different trainings, both in-state and out-of-state, on the prospective area of interest.
And were you working on July 11th of 2019?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall responding to a report of gunshots?
I did respond to a report of a shooting that occurred at 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler. Four Peaks Place.
And you indicated that you responded to a call. What type of call was that?
So the call came out as a shooting call, and the reporting party was an Alex Cox, who had indicated that he had shot his brother-in-law.
And was that call made to 911?
Yes, it was.
Do you know the approximate time the call was placed?
I believe it was roughly around 9:30 in the morning.
And with your organization, or with your office, do they keep CAD notes?
We do.
And with the CAD notes, will that have the originating call information on those?
Yes, it would.
Detective Duncan, have you looked at CAD notes before?
Yes, I have.
And have you looked at the CAD notes in this case?
I have.
And if you were shown a copy of what's purported to be the CAD notes for this case, do you think you would recognize those?
I would.
Your Honor, I have what's marked as State's Exhibit 46. I would ask that the witness be shown these.
All right.
And do you recognize those?
I do. This would be a copy of a hard copy of the CAD notes for this particular case.
And do you see the originating time of the 911 call?
Yeah, the originating time, the call times received at 8:36 hours and dispatched at 8:37 hours.
And did you respond out?
8:37.
Did you respond out initially?
Once I heard the call and our particular unit for a robbery and a homicide, we will respond to that. So was I dispatched to this particular call? No, we just responded once we heard the radio traffic.
And do you recognize those CAD notes?
I do.
And are those, in fact, the CAD notes related to this shooting incident that you responded out to?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of Exhibit 46.
Any objection from the defense?
Your Honor, we would ask for some clarification on whether or not this is part of the 404B evidence that the court has previously ruled upon.
Let me have a brief sidebar with counsel, if I may. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's a kind of a technical legal issue that's come up at this point. I'm going to take a brief break just to my chambers to review something quickly. I don't think it merits an actual break to have you excused to the jury room, so if everyone can just wait here for, should be 5 minutes or less, then we'll continue back on the record. You're free to stand up and stretch your legs if you like, and then we'll get started right back up once I return from chambers.
All right.
All right, at this time the court will have an instruction for the jurors at this point in the case. I will note on the record this is an issue that was previously brought before the court prior to trial, and I incorporate findings I've made previous to trial in terms of this instruction. I'll also advise you members of the jury that you will receive a written form of this instruction before your deliberations commence, so you don't necessarily have to memorize this or note it all down, but I'll be giving you this instruction now and maybe at other times during the trial as well. So the instruction is this. Ladies and gentlemen, during the course of this trial, evidence will be introduced for purpose of showing that the defendant committed acts other than that for which the defendant is on trial. Such evidence, if believed, is not to be considered by you to prove the defendant's character or that the defendant has a disposition to commit crimes. Rather, such evidence may be considered by you only for the limited purpose of proving the defendant's motive, opportunity, intent, plan, or absence of mistake or accident. So that's the instruction that's provided. And with that, Ms. Blake, you can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, I think we'd left off with the introduction of the exhibit. I'm not sure if defense had an objection.
All right, Exhibit 46 has been offered. Is there an objection from the defense?
No, Your Honor, with that instruction, we have no objection.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. So Exhibit 46 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I next have what is marked State's Exhibit 29B. I would indicate this is a business record certification of Apple Custodian of Records. It's my understanding this has previously been stipulated to by counsel, and it deals directly with a iCloud account belonging to the defendant. I would move for the admission of those records.
Any objection to State's Exhibit 29B being entered?
No, Your Honor, we have previously stipulated that.
Okay, I thought so. Exhibit 29B is admitted. It may have been previously admitted, but it is admitted.
And just to clarify, that would include the documents that is referencing and the data.
As far as I understand, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, you said you did respond out to that report of a shooting. When you arrived on scene, were you assigned any specific tasks?
I was. In this particular case, I was assigned to assist Detective Coons, and he and I were going to be the detectives in charge of documenting the crime scene.
Is it common practice for you to have specific designations for different detectives?
It is. There's a lot that goes on involved in a homicide investigation. We usually try to break it up as much as we can into a lead detective who is in charge of the case overall. We have a crime scene detective. We might have somebody in charge of interviews. So there's a lot of different moving parts in a homicide investigation that we try to assign to other investigators.
Do you know who the original lead investigator was?
So the original lead investigator in this case was Detective Nathan Moffat.
At some point, did that change?
It did.
And who became the lead investigator?
So Detective Moffat was promoted in June of 2020, and at that point I became the lead investigator in this case.
Prior to that time, did you continue to assist with the investigation?
I did. Unfortunately, I had other commitments after this case, immediately after, so I wasn't able to assist as much as possible. But shortly after, in January, I was able to obtain some records that are app or iCloud account records and some cell phone records that I looked through and analyzed.
And going back to that July 11th date, when you were assisting with the scene, what does it generally include if you're the scene detective?
So as a scene detective, when we first get there, we have the assistance of a crime scene detective, or a crime scene technician, sorry. A crime scene technician is an evidence technician that will first take photographs of the overall scene. Once that is done, the crime scene detective itself will go through and determine items of evidentiary value that we need to collect, photograph, and then seize as evidence in this case.
As part of being the scene detective or assisting the scene detective, did you deal with the body?
I did. In this case, the body is as evidence as anything else in the scene. So I made a call to the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's office once our photographs were taken, and then a medical examiner investigator responded to assist us with the investigation and to take control of the body.
And I may have jumped ahead a little bit with this. Because you'd responded to the report of a shooting, when you got there, was it determined if there was a victim?
Yes, there was.
Was the victim alive?
The victim was not alive.
Did you learn the identity of the victim?
Yes, through our investigation and through the caller, the victim was identified as Charles Vallow.
And when you respond to the report of an unattended death, is it your common practice to investigate?
Yes, any unattended death that we investigate, we automatically investigate as a homicide until the evidence or witness statements proves otherwise.
And in this case, did you observe Charles Vallow's body?
I did.
What observations did you make?
So upon entering the residence, there is a large living room area. In this living room, it was a wood flooring, planked flooring. There was no furniture in this room. There were mirrors along the north side of the room, the west side of the room, and I believe the east side or south side of the room, which was odd. Charles was laying what we refer to as in the supine position or on his back on the west side of this particular living room. His head was to the north and his feet were to the south. When I had observed him first, his shirt had been cut away from his body to expose his chest. There was medical equipment on his chest that were used to confirm death. And his arms were to his side and his feet were stretched out to the south.
Did you make any observations as to injuries or visible injuries to his body?
I did. Charles had a wound consistent with a gunshot wound to the lower left quadrant of his abdomen, and that was the only wound at the time that was visible. He did have some bleeding in the webbing of his left hand, but other than that, there was not much other blood present.
As a detective, or even before becoming a detective, have you responded out to other shooting deaths?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever responded out to another shooting death with so little blood?
I have not. Normally in shooting cases, you will see much more blood than I observed in this case. We also look for blood spatter, or trails that would indicate any kind of movement of the deceased after they were shot. And I did not notice any of that present.
And you had previously indicated that it was Alex Cox that had reported the shooting?
That is correct.
Do you know what he reported in regards to the shooting?
Alex had told police that he had shot Charles in self-defense.
Do you know if he indicated how many times he had shot Charles?
Yes, Alex had indicated that he shot Charles twice in the chest while he was standing.
And you indicated you only saw one bullet hole, but you said initially.
Correct, that's initially.
At some point, did you discover any other injuries to his body?
Yes. Lying next to Charles' body, can I go back a little bit? There were 2 shell casings, 45 caliber shell casings that were to the west of his body. Also next to his left shoulder, there was a bullet or a projectile that was laying on the ground, which was odd. He, like I said, very, very little blood present, but he, other than the webbing in that projectile. Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Sorry.
you're fine. At some point, did you observe other injuries to his body?
Yes. Those other injuries are noted after the medical examiner arrives. We do not touch the body at all until the medical examiner arrives. They have jurisdiction over the body. Once the medical examiner arrives, they can do a more, not very thorough, but just a brief inspection of the body, if you would, making observations. In the center of Charles's chest was an AED pad that was used for defibrillation. That pad was kind of pulled back, and there was another similar hole in the center of his chest that was also consistent with a gunshot wound. Charles' body was eventually rolled, and once rolled, there was another wound to his upper left back or shoulder area that was also consistent with a gunshot wound.
And did you know or could you tell if the injury to his back would have been an entry or an exit wound?
I try not to make those determinations on scene, and those are more for the medical examiner to determine.
And the report from Alex had been that he had shot Charles twice in the chest.
Correct.
So at least Alex's indication where the shots had come from the front.
Front to back,
would have entered
yes.
front. And you have talked about the lack of blood. Do you know whether or not there was any indication as to whether or not CPR was performed on Charles or attempted?
So in the reports given in the 911 call that we listened to, Alex had indicated that he had given Charles CPR. Based on what I saw,
Objection, Your Honor. I know where he's going with this. I'm going to object to him responding that he can make some sort of a medical diagnosis as to whether or not Alex performed CPR.
I think it's premature, the objection at this point. We'll wait and see if that's where the testimony heads, but I'll keep that under advisement, Mr. Thomas.
Have you been to scenes before where there were injuries to a body and CPR was performed?
yes.
Have you seen the aftermath? Oh, I apologize. Yes. Have you been to other incidents where there were injuries to the body and CPR was performed?
Yes.
And I'm going to renew my objection, Your Honor. This is exactly where they're going.
Well, I understand, but additional foundations being laid now, so it's overruled at this point, Mr. Thomas.
In your experience, if CPR is performed, do you notice more blood?
You would notice more blood, yes.
And would that be due to the injuries?
With an injury to the chest and also to the back, you would expect as you are compressing on the heart that blood would either go to the front or to the back.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is calling for speculation. He's speculating as to what would happen when somebody's given CPR after being shot.
And, Your Honor, I believe he's speaking to his training and experience and what observations he made at the scene.
Yes, and it's overruled for that reason. Thank you, Ms. Blake.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I'll note, of course, you can cross-examine on the point, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
With regard to Charles' body, did you notice the amount of blood you would have expected to see had CPR been performed?
I did not.
And you indicated that Alex had reported he had shot Charles in self-defense.
Yes.
Were you able to make any kind of a determination if there had been a struggle or a fight based on the scene?
Charles did have some abrasions to his knees, were the only thing outside of those wounds to his chest and to his back. There were some abrasions. The house being kind of sparsely furnished, unable to determine if there was any furniture knocked over or any indication that two grown men had been fighting. So we were unable to determine whether or not an altercation occurred.
Did you locate blood anywhere else in the residence?
Yes. The only other place outside of where Charles was lying immediately, the only other blood in the residence was on a faucet within the kitchen. And in this case, Alex had indicated that he had washed his hands in that faucet.
And you indicated the medical examiner's office will show up before the body's removed.
And they removed the body, yes.
And they do some kind of initial examination.
The investigator will do an initial investigation before they place the body in a body bag, yes. And they will also take notes for their investigation.
Were you present while that was being done?
Yes, I was.
Did you see Charles' body being removed?
Yes, I did.
And I believe you've talked about seeing an injury to his back, what appeared to be a bullet hole.
Yes, I did.
Did you make any other observations as his body was being removed?
Other than his kind of physique, his size, he was a man in his 60s. He was in very good shape, had athletic wear on. I did not notice any other bleeding on his body other than coming from his torso and the abrasions to his knees.
Did you notice anything with regard to the scene itself as he was being removed?
Yes, during the investigation, we did in that living room area. There is a very tall baseboard on the flooring in that wood plank floored room. On the east side of the room, there was a projectile that was stuck inside of the baseboard. That baseboard was, after being photographed, that baseboard was cut out as evidence, and the projectile was also kept as evidence. In addition to, after Charles was removed from the residence, we made the decision to bring Alex Cox back to the home and have him do what we refer to as a walkthrough, to try to have him explain where he was standing and what had occurred during that time. I made the decision that I did not want to give Alex any kind of perspective as to where he was standing. So out of the ordinary, we cleaned up a large amount of blood that was now under the pool underneath him, and we cleaned that blood up from the wood flooring. When that blood was cleaned up, I noticed an indention consistent with a strike mark from a bullet in the floor.
And was that directly under where Charles' body was?
It had been directly under where his left shoulder was.
Did you check the floor for other similar marks?
I did.
Did you find any other similar markings in that floor?
There were no similar markings.
And we've talked about what the room looked like. Was there furniture in that room?
There was not, no.
Were you able to form any opinion as to where Charles would have been located when the second shot was fired?
Yes.
And what was your opinion?
In my opinion, based on the trajectory of the shot from the lower abdomen and the wound to the upper left shoulder, and the consistency with the wound, Charles would have been laying on the ground when that second shot was fired.
Do you know if an autopsy was conducted on Charles?
Yes, it was.
Were you present for that?
I don't recall if I was present. Detective Coons might have been to that, but I have read the report, yes.
And is it common practice for a detective to attend the autopsy?
Every time, yes. On homicides, yes.
Was this, and you said a detective did attend the autopsy?
Yes.
So was this determined at some point to be a homicide?
Yes, it is.
If a shooting is done in self-defense, does your agency indicate that's a homicide?
Yes, it is.
So now fast forwarding to January of 2020, you took over as the case agent.
June of 2020, but January I started to review records, yes.
I apologize, yes. So January you start to review the records. So I'm going to fast forward you to January. You're still not the main detective on this, but you started helping a lot more again.
Yes, I did.
And you'd indicated that you had looked at some electronic records.
I did.
Do you recall specifically some of the records that you looked at?
Yes. The first series of records that I looked at were a phone extraction from Charles Vallow's phone. The second would have been an iCloud account called Lori for Style, which was linked back to Lori Vallow.
Did you look at any additional iCloud accounts?
With the discovery of reviewing the Lori for Style iCloud, an additional iCloud was noted that went by the name of Lolly Time.
And did you look at any iCloud accounts attached to Charles?
Yes, we also looked at Charles's iCloud account. We looked at Charles's Gmail account. We looked at phone records. So there's a lot of electronic data that was looked at during that time.
Did you review the extractions from those devices
I did.
and link to those accounts?
Yes.
Just one moment. And talking about Charles' phone, do you know how Charles' phone came to be in the possession of the Chandler Police Department?
Yes, we had learned that Charles' phone was the catalyst for an argument between Lori and Charles on July 11th. During that time, after Charles was shot, Lori had taken Charles' phone with her in his rental car. That phone was later returned by Lori to the Chandler Police.
Was an extraction done on Charles' phone?
Yes, it was.
And did you review that extraction?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall if you were able to view some emails?
I was, yes.
Were you able to view text messages or SMS or MMS messages?
Yes, I was.
And when you were looking through Charles' phone, were there specific things you were looking for?
There was. In the weeks to months following the death of Charles Vallow, there was some information that came forward that Charles was possibly killed because he was a dark spirit, a zombie, there was some infidelity, some accusations of infidelity. So in that time, in reviewing those, I was specifically looking for information regarding that would help us in this investigation.
Did you find some information that you felt was helpful?
I did.
Did you find some information that drew your attention?
Yes,
Did you document that information in a report?
I did.
And have you reviewed a PowerPoint that documents some of that information?
Yes, I have.
And the PowerPoint that you reviewed, is that a true and accurate representation of some of the items that you saw on Charles' phone?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I have what's marked as State's Exhibit 49. Defense and the court hopefully have their copies. If I could have the witness shown this.
You can have that provided to the witness at this point.
And if I can just have you glance through that.
Okay.
And does that appear to be an accurate representation of the PowerPoint that you looked at?
Yes, it is.
And does that appear to be accurate to what you had documented in your report?
Yes.
And accurate as to what you observed on Charles' phone?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of that exhibit.
Any objection from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. We would object. May I bother your aid of this objection?
Yes.
When did you make this PowerPoint up?
The PowerPoint I've created several PowerPoints for this case, but for presentations, but this one was made over the last couple days.
For presentations?
Yes.
To whom?
To Maricopa County courts or the prosecutor's office. I've done one for them, and I've also done one for other investigators in this to kind of show them key details in this.
And when did you turn this particular PowerPoint over to the prosecuting attorney?
So this was yesterday and then reviewed today.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no idea if these text messages are what they purport to be. I don't know. I haven't gone through these particular texts to make sure that they're not taken out of context or if they're even accurate in what they are. So I'm going to object based on foundation. I don't know if these are what they say they are.
Ms. Blake, I'm concerned about that time frame for disclosure. I think at a minimum the defense is allowed to review and make sure that if this is a compilation or summary of other previously provided discovery that it's accurate. So I'll allow the state a response on that objection, but those are the concerns I see at this point.
Sorry, the state would cite to Idaho Rule of Evidence 1006 that allows for summaries in order to show the content of voluminous writings, recordings, or photographs. These, as the detective has testified to, these are accurate depictions of what are contained in police reports that have been turned over to the defense. These particular messages have been available in discovery.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes.
The police report she's referring to is over 1,500 pages long. So I have serious concerns.
All right. At this point, here's what I'm going to do. I'll allow the jurors to take our mid-afternoon break. I'll further consult with counsel here after they're excused for a moment, and we'll go back with the presentation after that. So let's have the jurors be excused at this point. We'll argue this a little more outside their presence and then take our break.
All right,
Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Blake, so on the objection, again, it may well come in under 1006, but the defense needs an opportunity to confirm that this is a summary of information they've previously been provided. So my suggestion is if you can point out to the defense where this was in the voluminous discovery that's been referred to by Mr. Thomas, then we can determine whether or not it comes in under 1006 or whether the objection is sustained or not. But given the timing of it, I do think the state should be required to show precisely where this information came from out of those voluminous reports to make sure that it's accurate, as Mr. Thomas has raised a concern about that.
And the state can understand the position on that. I would indicate that as part of the 404B, we did extract portions of the Chandler report, and those were provided to defense counsel. These would be in those extractions in the written format of the report. The phone extraction itself has also been provided. It would have gone out, I believe, in production 1, but we can look and find exactly where that is to locate these. But they were produced in both of those.
Okay, and they may well have been. I think it's up to you to point those out to the defense at this point so they can confirm that, in fact, they have been provided that, to see if they have any other objections. So we'll let you wrestle with that issue for a bit while we take our afternoon break, and then see where we stand after the state's had an opportunity to do that. So we'll be in recess at this time.
all right.
All right, before we bring the jury in, I'll just ask the parties to make their representations. We talked about a resolution to the issue of the timing of the disclosure of the Exhibit 49, and I think the parties have agreed on a way to get this resolved just by scheduling. So, Ms. Blake, what's the understanding of how the state will proceed on that issue?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe the parties have reached an agreement with regard to the evidence that the state was asking to have admitted. At this juncture, the state has agreed to move on with some additional questioning that deals with different materials, and the parties have agreed to take the night and come back and begin with that sometime tomorrow, depending on the rulings of the court.
All right, thank you. Does the defense agree we can proceed in that manner?
We agree to proceed in that manner. We are only waiving our objection to the timing portion of it. We haven't reviewed it yet, so we don't know about any other evidentiary issues.
Understood. So 46 has been offered. It has not been admitted. I'll hear any further objections if necessary tomorrow, but we'll pass over that part of the evidence at this point and allow the defense adequate time to review the underlying recordings or documents that were used to summarize under Rule 1006. And so the state, I understand, has additional direct for this witness that we can continue with this afternoon.
That is correct, Your Honor. However, I guess maybe before the jury comes in, the court had given a limiting instruction regarding 404B. I believe we are currently moving outside of 404B and believe that an instruction would be appropriate. And then if we head back into that tomorrow, I think a new instruction could be given.
All right. I guess I'm not really aware if we instruct going in and out of 404B. I think that instruction, when it comes up, is appropriate. I think as we move on to other topics, that can just be clarified again with the written instructions. But if the state believes there needs to be a kind of a now we're exiting 404B instruction, I'd consider that. I'm not really aware of that being required. If it helps, counsel, I think that during closings you can distinguish what was 404B, what was not, and that needs to be limited for sure with a instruction they'd be provided with.
And I think the state would agree that it could be done with the jury instruction. However, if the court would be willing, we do believe that an instruction given the specific type of evidence that the state is next going to be trying to admit, that it may be beneficial so that there isn't any confusion amongst the jurors that it could only be considered for limited purpose. These particular, one document has been stipulated to a one exhibit, is my understanding. The other one comes from an iCloud account linked directly to the defendant, and so we do not believe that it falls within that 404. It does not deal specifically with the subject matter that we 404B'd.
All right, Mr. Thomas, do you have any position on that request for a further instruction?
We believe that anything coming from Arizona is 404B because it would deal with whatever happened in Arizona.
All right, at this point, I'm going to not give any further instruction on 404B for purposes of continuing with this witness, and we'll take that up if we need to and get clearly outside of the scope. But at this point, where this does all relate to Arizona matters and the acts for which the defendant is not charged here in this trial, I do think it's appropriate that the instruction's just been given, and then that can be explained further in argument or further instruction if necessary.
And, Your Honor, I guess if I may briefly.
Go ahead.
The state's only concern is just that, the defense taking the stance that anything coming from Arizona is automatically 404B. That dealt with specific actions, and I think the court indicated that. Specifically, during a prior 404B hearing, we talked about the shooting of Charles Vallow being the 404B. The evidence that the state is going to be attempting to introduce is a completely unrelated to Arizona document. It was simply located, this is one of the detectives who reviewed that through an iCloud account, which has already been stipulated that the contents of that iCloud account would come in. It in no way references or deals specifically with just the Arizona case or just the attempt or the shooting of Charles Vallow.
All right, well, at this point, I think it is probably premature for me to determine that I would give the instruction until we get to that point. If it's clear that the evidence coming in is outside of the scope of 404B, then I'll reconsider providing some sort of instruction to the jurors. I just don't think I can do that at this point without knowing for sure what the evidence is until it's being offered. So I'll keep that matter under advisement, and I may give some form of instruction with that request if it's clear that we've moved outside of the scope of this 404B evidence that's been allowed in the case.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. With that, then, we can go ahead and have the jurors brought back in.
Jury's all present, accounted for, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. Okay, we are back on the record. I'll remind the witness that you're still under oath. There was an exhibit that was offered. We've not yet ruled on that, and I understand the state will be moving on to another topic at this point of inquiry. Is that correct, Ms. Blake?
That is correct, Your Honor. The state would intend to move forward and revisit the other matter tomorrow.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Blake. You can continue then with the remaining direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Duncan, as part of your investigation, at some point were you contacted about looking into a call placed to a mortuary?
I was.
Do you recall who reached out to you to request that you do that?
I believe that was Agent Wright with the FBI.
Did you in fact follow up on that request?
I did.
Were you able to get in touch with the mortuary?
Yes, it says Valley of the Sun Mortuary in Chandler, Arizona.
Did you request a copy of a call that was placed to them?
Yes, I did.
What was the specific call that you were interested in?
So there was a call that was placed in reviewing phone records for a phone number linked to Chad Daybell. A phone call was placed from a phone linked to him to the cemetery. And it was requested for me to go to that location or contact someone from that location and get the recordings of the phone call if there were any.
And were you aware if there was an answering service that also was attached to that call?
Yes, there is first an answering service recording, and then afterwards somebody from the mortuary will does call back.
And had you heard the name Chad Daybell before?
Yes, I have.
When you began going through all the records, were you still investigating the homicide of Charles Vallow?
Yes, I was.
In your agency, is there a distinction between homicide committed in self-defense, like a justifiable homicide, versus just a homicide?
We basically treat both the same, whether it's self-defense or not. Either if it is self-defense or not self-defense, either case would get submitted to the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office for review.
And when you were reviewing these records in January, were you aware of any other pending investigations that were reported to be related?
Yes, I was.
And what were those?
So after the murder of Charles Vallow and the months following, we were aware that JJ and Tylee were not seen. So in examining these records, we were looking for any possible whereabouts of JJ and Tylee. We were also looking for any kind of information regarding a attempted homicide of Tammy Daybell. We're looking for records for attempted homicide of Brandon Boudreaux in Gilbert, Arizona, and other crimes through there we were aware of during that time in January.
And, Your Honor, I have what's marked as States Exhibit 44, and I also have States Exhibit 45. These are the recordings of the mortuary call and the call center that were referenced. It's my understanding that counsel would stipulate to the admission of those.
All right. Does the defense object to the admission of Exhibit 44?
No objection, Your Honor.
Does the defense object to Exhibit 45 being entered?
No objection.
All right. Both Exhibits 44 and 45 are entered and may be published to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sir? Right answer. You're home? Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm assisting on the third call. How can I help you today?
We just had a death in the family, and we really don't want anything but a cremation and then to send the cremains to a family in Louisiana. Just a simple, nothing other than a cremation and sending him to his family for a service in Louisiana. So, is there any way to know a ballpark price on that?
Yes, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Let me transfer you over to the director who can assist you with the pricing. What is your name, please?
It is Chad Daybell.
How do you spell the last name, please?
D-A-B-A-L, Daybell.
How are you related to the person who passed?
I'm his nephew.
And then also, this is for the Valley of the Suns in Chandler, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, he lives there in Chandler. I live in Iowa, so I'm just trying to help out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, what is your uncle's name for reference, please?
He is John Daybell.
His last name?
Well, D-A-B-A-L. The same. John. Uh-huh.
Does he have a middle name?
Myron?
M-Y-R-O-N?
Yeah.
And Chad, what is your phone number in case we get disconnected?
Yeah. This number, 515, I don't actually know my own number. Let me look real quick.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Five 402-0143.
Thank you. Is he at a nursing home, hospital, or residence?
He passed away in a hospital. I don't know the details. I'm just calling.
Yeah, it's just for, to know, because sometimes it's different if it's a residential or hospital or a nursing home.
I'm thinking they're sending him to the medical examiner. I'm not sure. I should have had more information before I called. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. Cremation with Which city?
New Orleans. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, one moment please, Chad, stay on the line. Let me
Okay.
transfer you over to the director who can assist you with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Chad.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding. I do have the director, Carissa, on the line to further assist you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Your Honor, and I believe the court indicated, but may the state publish State's Exhibit 45?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Chad, my name is Carissa. I'm a funeral director with Vallow Cemetery. I understand that your uncle passed away.
Yes, and I'm just starting the process for the family. He didn't have many relatives. I'm his nephew. I live in Iowa. But what they
Sorry to
want
hear that.
to do, yeah, sad to see him go. Yeah, I think he's going to the medical examiner. I don't know all the details, but what the family basically wants is just to have him cremated there in Chandler and then have his cremains shipped to New Orleans. And we'll deal with the service later. So just trying to get a ballpark price.
Okay, so for a cremation, we are able to do our cremation for $1,695. Now what that's going to include is the transportation into our care, the transportation to and from our crematory, our basic professional fees, as well as our crematory fee. Now there's going to be a couple other charges there for you.
Okay.
So we are going to have death certificates, which are 20 away a piece with a processing fee.
Okay.
$15 permit fee.
All right.
And then we're able to do that transfer through the mail for you, and that's $150 fee for you.
Okay. Like CPS or something, I guess.
Okay?
So close about 2,000 probably, and the ballpark. Yeah.
Close to that.
Okay. Well, that helps me a lot. I'm going to call one or two others, but I'll get back to you if we come that direction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you need anything else, give me a call.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Todd?
Detective Duncan, which city was Charles Vallow killed in?
Charles was killed in Chandler, Arizona.
Do you know if that call was placed around the time of his death?
It was placed the evening following his death.
I believe you indicated you were requested to look into it because the phone number on that call had been attached to Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Have you ever heard Chad Daybell's voice?
I have.
Are you able to recognize the voice on that call?
Yes, I am.
And who was that?
Chad Daybell.
Do you know where Charles was originally from?
Charles was originally from Louisiana.
In your review of the Lori for Styles, do you recall coming across a recording of a blessing?
I believe it's Lori for Style, not the Styles. I just asked Lori for Style. But
Lori for Style.
I do recall coming across a blessing, yes.
And thank you for correcting me on that. So in Lori for Style at iCloud, you came across a blessing.
I did, yes.
Do you know who the blessing was for?
The blessing was for Alex Cox.
Did you review that?
Yes, I did.
Was it an audio recording?
There is both an audio recording and a Word document transcript for that, yes.
Were you able to discern who else was on that recording?
Yes.
And who was that?
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Were you able to determine if it was a specific type of blessing?
Yes, I was.
And what type of blessing?
The blessing is referred to as a patriarchal blessing.
And are you familiar with that term?
I am.
Do you know if it's attached to a specific religion?
It is.
And what religion is that?
So patriarchal blessing is attached to the Mormon religion, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is a blessing that is given to any worthy member of the church. And it is a blessing that is given by a stake patriarch of that church, and a blessing that is given to provide guidance through your life.
Do you know who gave Alex Cox that blessing?
In that audio, that is Chad Daybell that gave Alex Cox the blessing.
And within the LDS religion, are you aware as to whether or not Chad held the appropriate authority to provide that blessing?
I've been informed that he is not.
And Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 50. It is the audio recording recovered from Lori for Style iCloud account. That is those documents and the data have been stipulated to through the business record, is my understanding.
And what's the exhibit number?
It is exhibit number 50.
And you're moving to admit that?
I would be moving for admission.
Is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, exhibit 50 can be admitted.
And Your Honor, I would ask to publish it to the jury.
All right, and how long is that?
I believe it should be, I will pull it up to get you the exact timestamp, but it's just over 20 minutes.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear that, and then that'll probably take us to the end of the day then, Ms. Blake.
Actually, it's shorter than I had remembered. It is 15 minutes and 42 seconds.
Okay, thank you for that information. You may publish this to the jury.
I am Chad Daybell. It is November 24th, 2019, Sunday afternoon, 5:15 p.m. We're going to give Alex Lamar Cox a patriarchal blessing.
Alexander Lamar.
Alexander Lamar Cox. On this special day, I lay my hands upon your head to give you a patriarchal blessing as part of the member of the Church of the Firstborn that you have earned the privilege to be a member of. I do so by the power of the Melchizedek priesthood which I hold, and in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior, who has authorized this blessing, and is grateful that you're receiving it as you move forward in your life. You are a member of the house of Israel, of the 12 tribes, and you are a descendant of Joseph through the tribe of Ephraim, which grants you many blessings, particularly of spreading the gospel in these latter days and protecting and preserving those who seek to learn the truth. And that has been your mission on this earth, and it will now expand into ways that we will discuss further in the blessing. I want to begin by opening up the portals of time and going back to your previous creations on which you've lived. I see you on the third creation as a valiant warrior fighting for truth and righteousness, always seeking to do what is right. Then you progressed and were selected by the Savior himself to be part of the fourth creation. Great warriors were needed In that creation, powerful goddesses were needed to be protected, and you were selected to help protect your sister. And you helped her in numerous probations as a defender. You have a special bond even from the premortal world. You connected there. And as she grew in power, you were right there beside her, always. With a humble heart, you both always were so humble. So as this fifth creation began, after you had been exalted in the fourth creation, when you could have gone on to exaltation with Holly, resurrected being, you accepted the Savior's invitation one more time to come to this mortal realm, to condescend as a God, to help us. You have already assisted us in ways that can never be repaid. But you will continue to do so as you move forward in this life. You were born into a family that needed you desperately, with a set of parents who spoke of the gospel with their mouths, yet did not live it. And once again, you were reunited with a sister who needed you to survive such an environment. In no way was it a reflection on either one of you that you lived in that home. You were put there to help each other persevere. But the lessons you had to learn in your youth have now made you both strong, powerful servants of the Lord that would not have occurred in a traditional LDS home. You had to go to great depths to achieve tremendous heights. And the fruits of those trials are beginning to be demonstrated. You were granted to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that was a strength to you. You learned about your Savior and grew closer to Him, and rekindled in some ways the connections you've always had with Him. And through adulthood, you have refined yourself. And I just want you to know that at this time the Savior is saying to me, well done. Thy soul is cleansed. All is well. And now you'll begin into your terrestrial phase of this existence, that you'll be a powerful servant. I bless you with that knowledge that you will now move forward as a true warrior in ways that can be demonstrated through not only physical action, but through spiritual power that is coming to you and that will be bestowed upon you. I bless you with the knowledge that through marriage you'll be united with a partner who will match your powers and complement your strengths. You'll be known throughout the world for your good-heartedness, your willingness to save souls all over the world through portals, and you will begin to gather the souls that come unto Christ. I see you in New Jerusalem, but more importantly, I see you as a messenger of the Lord. Surrounding New Jerusalem will be many small communities where people will come who aren't quite ready to enter those missions will be to go among the people and testify as a prophet that they can make it. You'll share your own experiences of overcoming adversity, and through your example they will rise up. You will give tremendous blessings to them, raise their vibrations, and be like a brother to many of these fathers who may have had doubts, but through your strength they will look to you as a hero, and you'll bring entire families that have been sanctified to the gates of New Jerusalem, and they will be allowed in on your word. It will be just one of the many wonderful experiences you'll have. I see you doing that often, but then based on assignments, you might go further into the world. Always serving, always a missionary. And with your companion, you'll communicate with Mother Earth herself. You will know where to be before natural disasters happen. That you can be on location to protect key leaders, church leaders, and to preserve who should survive. Little children, I see you gathering up little children in your arms, saving them from floodwaters. Just having a collage of moments that await you in this life, rescuing the pure and innocent, leading them to safety. Dozens of instances, and you will be looked upon as an angel on earth. You will literally glow for those who are allowed to see you, and those mortals who aren't allowed to see that will know through the Spirit of the great power you possess. Proper time, after many years of service in such ways, as the second coming approaches, you will know when it's time to move to the other side. This body that has served you well will lay down one day, and you'll pass. Your spirit will leave this body, and you'll be greeted wholeheartedly and welcomed by the Savior himself. You will already know him, but that reunion will take place on a greater plane, that the Spirit you'll feel at that time, the vibration will exceed all. Before the second coming even occurs, the Savior will let that body rest a day or two, and much like himself, you will be raised and be resurrected, so that when the Savior does return, you will be right at the front of that amazing team of angels that will sweep the earth. Much like described in the renewed earth, you will be there. It will bring you great joy to help Mother Earth transfer to a terrestrial realm, to burn away the celestial refuse. At that time, you and Holly will still have assignments here temporarily, but then you will move forward. She's already preparing a world for you two, and you will be able to be an eternal family with eternal children on that earth. And the glory will just continue for you, Al, on and on through eternity. So we bless you at this time with strength, power, and dominion over the callings you will receive, and that you are part of a very special team of people that are moving towards translation and transfiguration, and that the Lord will be with you at all times. You will be a patriarch in your own home. You will give blessings similar to this. Your veil will be essentially gone. You'll be able to see into the past and into the future for these individuals and share with them the same type of knowledge and truth. We bless you with protection throughout your mortal life. That angels will now be assigned to you as you reach this vibration. You have 9 angels assigned to you now to watch you from all sides through your faithfulness. I know you will stay faithful. You have a great mission. I protect you. I bless you with a strong protection against Satan and his followers, Lucifer, Cain, anyone else who seeks to oppose you. You'll feel a new vitality and strength against them, and to use your priesthood to defend against them. I close this patriarchal blessing by assuring you that you will rise to an eternal glory, and that you will have an eternal family, and that your exaltation is assured through your faithfulness. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
All right, Ms. Blake, at this point then, given the time, I think we will adjourn for the day. Is the state okay with that?
Your Honor, could I ask one follow-up question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Detective Duncan, do you know if there was a timestamp or an indication of when that recording was made?
I believe in the metadata on that there is a timestamp, yes.
Do you recall what it is?
I want to say it was November 24th or 25th of 2020.
I have no further questions.
Okay, so
Good. Actually, I guess I will clarify. Could it have been 2019?
Or 2019, sorry.
And do you know when Alex Cox, if he's still alive?
Alex is not alive now.
Do you know when he passed away?
I don't know the exact date, but I use a reference is he would have died in Arizona around about the same day that Tammy Daybell was exhumed.
Could that have been in December of 2019?
That is correct.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, and that's for today, but you're not concluding direct, right?
I guess I should indicate that, yes, for today, with regard to that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Blake. So that will bring us up to the time to conclude for the day. We will adjourn. I'll continue to thank the jurors for their service reporting here each day. I'll give you your daily admonishment at this time to please continue to follow the court's rules about not talking to each other or anyone else about this case, and not looking the case up on the internet, in the media, anywhere else. If you'll please comply with that today as you go home, and then we will see you again in the morning. Have you sign that juror affirmation when you get here, and we'll plan on starting again at 8:30 tomorrow on our regular schedule. So with that, we'll be adjourned for the day.
All right, please.